Good evening, everybody. I'm John O'Loughlin, and welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff Lives. And tonight, it's a pleasure to welcome back to the show Amber Connor from Atlanta, Georgia. Amber's been kind enough to serve as a kind of an Atlanta correspondent for us here at McDuff Lives, and she's been checking in with us once a month or so. And Amber's a mother, and she's been dealing with all kinds of fascinating issues with regard to politics and what's going on in Atlanta and Georgia generally, the elections, and trying to ensure some integrity in the political system in Georgia and Atlanta specifically. So it's a great pleasure, as always, to welcome you, Amber. How are you tonight?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, John.
Good, and I see you've got a new set. Your camera is set up now with some beautiful pictures behind you. What are those?
Yes, so this is my 10-year-old and 7-year-olds since they were little, art from their classrooms at school. What I learned long ago is that kids build confidence when they see some of their hard work being displayed. And when parents take that opportunity to show how proud they are, it goes into their subconscious and builds confidence in in just how they go about trying new things. And so, what we try to do is to point out those positive aspects and what we like. And one thing that I am worried about is after we get through this pandemic and all of the insanity that we've been experiencing, is what are all of our children's artwork going to look like from the last couple of years versus, because these are only pictures from before the pandemic. So I'm going to start rather soon, if things wind down, to get them to paint and I'm going to look at the things they're bringing home from school to see if there's any difference, to see if there's anything that stands out, to see if there's something that they're not sharing that they can't really get off their mind. Because I think if parents paid attention to that, they would see underlying issues that they may not be aware of. So I'm going to try to be aware of that as a parent and kind of navigate through how they express themselves in different ways other than using communication, because adults right now can't even communicate correctly. So how can we expect for our children to be able to communicate in a way that lets us know that they need us in difficult times?
Well, you have framed all of that artwork and displayed it beautifully, and so I'm sure the kids get the message that you're proud of what they've done, and it really does look great. So I'm so glad I asked. And your kids are how old again?
7 and 10-year-old boys, so they're active.
Yes. And how's their dad doing?
He's doing well.
Good. I understand you're in the landscape business. Is that right?
Correct. We learned a long time ago that, well, we got married a month before 9/11, and he was going to go into work for advertising. And at that time, I was really good at like doing promotions and advertising for a nightclub that I worked at, as well as really being a social person and gearing my career towards helping people, helping businesses. And right after that happened, we realized the world was about to change. We weren't quite sure how the world was going to change, but during that time, we realized that we had a issue, and so we decided to go into business for ourselves.
Well, that kind of brings me an opportunity to just jump right into today because a lot of people are trying to say that the world is changing now, that we're going through one of those great reset events, as our we talk about often about Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum trying to drive the agenda, which they seem to have the upper hand right now. It's I don't know how closely you follow the debate about the Great Reset or not, but when you mentioned the world has changed at 9/11, and here we are coming up to a 20th anniversary, and we also are talking about the world is changing. As a matter of fact, people like Klaus Schwab are not even willing to admit that it might not change, that it might actually go back to normal. And you began by saying, well, after the pandemic, after this thing is over, do you think it's going to end soon? Is there? Do you have hope? Because I would love to hear some hope that we're going to see the other end of this pandemic. What do you think?
Well, I think it's touch and go at this moment. I think it really depends on the individual. Uh, what I haven't really grasped is how people are in this stagnant state, right? They're waiting for a hero, they're waiting for a superhero, they're waiting for a friend. They're waiting until they're told what to do instead of being moved to expect the best from our leaders and to demand that they take into consideration what's going on within our society. And I found lately that the trust that was built into me as a child, just the inherent trust that you have when those who step up to lead take that leadership role and tell you, here's my oath, when they start to fail you, that's when um, that's when everyone's red flags go up. And I think right now we're at a red flag moment. It depends on how many people are waving a white flag. How many people are saying, I surrender. I surrender whatever you want to do. I just don't want to have to think about it. Versus the people waving a red flag and says, why is there a man that lives in Germany who dresses like a Star Trek character telling us how we need to live in the future? And, I always think about how we we're always we look at life through our own spectrum, what we see personally, and we don't really try to step into someone else's shoes. Why would someone be waving a white flag? Are they someone who just has trust and they assume that their government would not let them down? That their government would only do what's best for America because of course they support America, that they are Americans. Why would they not do what's best for America or the people in it? And that's what seems to have been lost throughout this journey, is that we have this weird blind trust. And at the same time, I'm going to touch on what you spoke about last night, and that's trauma and anxiety. So while somebody are waving the white flag, I think sometimes people wave the white flag because they're traumatized, they are tired, and they know they're not going to be able to turn back or to win, especially with the fight that they would normally have or resolve inside of them. So they grab the white flag. And the same with anxiety. If they're spinning in circles and they really don't know what's going on, to them, it's safer to wave the white flag versus those waving the red flag. They're giving the signal, we need to do something now. So if we remember, or if we think trauma is a deeply distressing or disturbing experience, it's an emotional shock. It can cause long-term neurosis. Anxiety is a feeling of worry, nervousness, unease. Some people are fight, some people are flight. Some people stand there waiting till it's time to move. And you also talked about faith. And I thought about that all last night. And, the way that I look at faith is it's faith in a substance or an assurance of things we hope for, but have not yet received. Or my favorite is the unquestioning belief that does not require proof or evidence. Faith can be beautiful, but what do we have faith in? And I think for those waving the red flag, we are frustrated at those waving the white flag because to us, they have faith in science. They have faith in government, and they don't seem to have faith in their fellow citizens, in their neighbors. And that needing of a security, like a foundation to go off of, to understand one another, is broken. So right now, whether we go into reset or whatever our future is, it seems like we've lost touch with one another. And everything is Republican or Democrat. Everything is left or right. And then there's people who have faith in only the military or law and order. I prefer law and order. I think it keeps a lot of us safe, but we want um, truthful law and order, and we don't want corruption within our law and order, because then it's not law and order at all. The same with having faith in science or having faith in government. How many times have we been told eggs are good for you? Wait a minute, eggs are bad for you. Wait a minute, eggs are good for you. Wait a minute, eggs are bad for you. So to have faith in things that make plenty of mistakes seems that we're missing the mark. Wouldn't we have faith that someone in their heart is feeling a certain way and want to know what that is, rather than allow the divide that's happening, so that we're picking up our proverbial flags and going into our corners and waving them, while those that caused us to grab the flags to begin with aren't really sweating at all. And if they're sweating, it's just because they're not getting their way at the moment. And so I feel like, we really have to dig into ourselves. Who are we? What do we stand for? And what are we not going to stand for? And where is our expectation for those who say they want to control our finances? They want to control how they educate our children. They want to control what we think as a society, what's in our books, what we're allowed to say. Do we know that we're comfortable with their intentions? We're in this situation right now because 20 years ago we were lied to, and everything like a domino effect has happened because of this. And when we look at it, it's because we had faith that what we saw and what we were told was happening was true. And although my husband and I didn't see it that way, and we caught a lot of blowback for it, it's very frustrating watching today. And so I'm very passionate about the sadness and the death that's taking place, because it didn't have to happen. And I think those who have faith in science are just as responsible as those who have faith in religion. And I think they both like to point a finger, while imperfection is flowing throughout every orifice of their being. And I think unless we can actually be what we say we believe in, then we're really nothing at all. And so hopefully we get ourselves together, and hopefully we start to have compassion, but not so much compassion that we condemn ourselves to death. We have to have logic, we have to have reason, and we have to have an expectation. And we also have to have honesty, and compassion comes with that. And so hopefully we can harness that. And I'm going to teach my children that, and I'm going to try to keep on that journey, but I can't control anyone other than myself and my reaction to every situation.
As we do recognize that there are people like the World Economic Forum that are trying to control every aspect of our lives, and we recognize that it looks like a 1984 scenario from Aldous Huxley and the whole Fabian Society nightmare, trying to impose that upon us in such a way that even if we have the best intentions, we won't be able to avoid being controlled by those that have the control. And that's one of the issues that we face here, right now as we're going through this. People have to make decisions of whether they're going to accept the offered or in some cases required medical treatment for a disease that they don't have, a disease that um, most people, I think, will most likely survive even if they are sick for a while. But that issue is not just about our health. It's also about what is in there. What is there some way to get something into us that's going to be able to communicate with them digitally? As you've heard about transhumanism, you've heard about the idea of merging humans with machines, and that's the basis of a great deal of science fiction that has been put into our minds as kind of pre-programming as we've grown up from basic science fiction like Robert Heinlein to the Star Trek and Star Wars and even everything that seems to be on television now, which I don't watch much of. But you know what I'm saying? Aside from the question of how do we confront this virus, is the question of are we risking something further in terms of losing our identity, losing our freedom, losing our liberty? And I don't know the answer. I don't know if there is an answer that has been published anywhere, but certainly is enough suspicion in the world. I'm not the only person that is quite concerned about what really could be going on here in terms of getting something into us that they can then use as a way to control us. Do you have any thoughts like that, or am I just out on a limb by myself here?
No, I don't think you're out on a limb whatsoever, John. I think that we're all having those issues, those inward thoughts, and sometimes outward thoughts. I tend to be very verbal about these things, and they tend to be very stressful at times. Um, I would say that when it comes to being given a choice that could be detrimental to your health or could cause a lot of issues, it's very important to ask questions. It's very, very important to make sure that you're not getting roped into something or expected to uh, participate in something that would ultimately hurt you in the long run. So, because of that issue, uh, we have to we have to push back on those who say it's 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 rude of someone to question those who are telling us exactly how they feel we need to proceed forward with being being given a choice of not being able to have a job if we don't take a certain jab. Um, we we would be considered irresponsible and be made fun of in the future by so many people that said, why did they do that? Why did they go along with that? I mean, have we not learned when we read history books and we look back on things and we see that mass amount of people did something and it seemed like nobody was asking a question, they just went with it? I mean, for instance, Nazi Germany. We look back and we say, how did they do that? How did that happen? What happened? There wasn't a lot of questions being asked. There wasn't a lot of research. No one walked up to the gas chambers that were going down, like playing in the courtyards and hanging out to see what is really going on. They just trusted. And I think that if our leaders want a society, right, where they want to say our society is the most evolved, our society is the most educated, we are full of intellectuals, they should hope and pray that we research these things, that we try to find out what is the who's responsible, not just, oh, there's a virus, you know here you go, this is your protocol, but to go, wait, there's a virus, wait, how did it get here, where did it come from, wait, who makes these, why do they make these, what is its purpose, what are we doing it for? If we're not asking these things and we're not curious, first of all, when it affects our children, our lives, our family, just every day, you can't wake up a moment without thinking, oh, did I wash my hands? I mean, we've gotten into the OCD level of this issue, and I can't imagine how many kids growing up are going to be germaphobes. And I'll tell you something that was very, very sad for me. My son woke up 2 days ago with like my 10-year-old with a whooping cough. The first thing I had to do was not show fear on my face. And then I was curious as to, well, I'm outspoken. Would a human being do something bad? And then I felt like, why am I living in a world where that would be a thought? And then I pushed that thought away and thought, no, they're kids. They're just now allowed to take off their masks when they're on the playground. He probably got close with all the other kids because they're probably super excited because for a whole year they couldn't be more than 3 feet near each other on the playground with a mask. And now they're just running around and having a blast. And they haven't been around each other to pass those nasty germs around. So everything's running rampant from our RSV to strep So like you name it, they're getting it, and they're getting it easily. And so each parent, the first thing out of their mind is like, oh gosh, what if it's COVID? What am I going to do? And what precautions do I take? Because the doctor's just going to say, well, you're just going to wait it out. Meanwhile, he could have pneumonia, he could have a secondary thing, he could have something that he would actually need to take medication for. So I I immediately comforted him, didn't think about myself, didn't think about what I could catch. And I was trying to get him comfortable, and he looked at me and he started crying. He said, I don't want to die. And I thought, I hate the people who have done this to our children. My 10-year-old is afraid of a common cold, of just used to when they get sick, they would complain that they couldn't play, or like, I want to do my Legos, but I don't feel good. There was not this worry of, I don't want to die. And we know in our conscious and psychologically, whatever we're thinking can actually affect our body. And so, how many children are going to go into a stress induced state that is going to debilitate organs and things in their body? And it's so irresponsible of our leaders to put this kind of stress on them and expect parents to not only not question them when they make a huge amount of mistakes, but to go along gleefully and at the same time raise a very learned child who is not a pain to society, who follows all instructions while being scared half out of their wits from everything from TV to cartoons to you name it. And you can't, in one token, they're saying you've got to teach your kindergartners about it's sexual proclivities because they need to know. And on the other token, they're saying your kids don't need to know about these adult subjects of war. Wait a minute. I thought they just need to know about what's going on. Are you now deciding what my child should know and at what age and what they shouldn't know? So they should just be, everything sexual, everything about color, and break up into societies that will then eventually cause war and eventually cause people to use bioweapons and everything else to destroy society? Or do we let them know and see what's going on around them? And when we do, will they say things like, I don't want to die? And these are the things that the adults around the world who wanted to take charge and lead, they're either playing God and they want us to learn some lesson that they've decided is best for us. But in the same token, are they destroying their own future and the future of their children's children because they're putting a frame of mind in our youth today that's ultimately destructive? And so I had to sit down and talk to my son and tell him, you shouldn't think that way. Mom and dad are going to take you to the doctor. We're going to see what's going on, and hey, at least you get a couple days with mom and we'll have fun. And so don't worry, buddy. I'm right here. Whatever you need, just talk to me. I just need to know what's hurting. I need to know what's going on. And I got him to start laughing and got his mind off of it. But that moment when he said that, I was furious. And I know that a lot of people who are doing this, they have no conscience. They don't care, and that's unacceptable. It's absolutely unacceptable. And I'm not going to accept it. And I'm going to be there to nip at their heels for the rest of my life because you don't mess with children. And every mom feels that way. And that's why you got a lot of mama bears standing up right now, because our youth is being messed with. And men have been debilitated. Certain men can't even say anything without being called 50 names, and those who put us in this situation are the ones that are putting it in their curriculum to make sure that those who would stand up against them are debilitated. So it's up to us women, because it's really hard for a grown man to be a bully to a woman. So, women, it's time that we step up and we make our voices be heard. Don't touch our children. Don't touch our children, or you're going to have to go and hide, period, because we're coming to look for you and we want to know who you are. And we're going to search to the truth until the truth is right there, and until everybody sees it, hears it, and knows it.
So when do you take over the school board?
Well, we have a good amount of candidates that are stepping up that are out of your box candidates. These are people that would have never thought that they would serve on a school board. They didn't even want to take the time. It doesn't really pay much of anything. And the meetings, if you've ever watched on like local government TV school board meetings, I mean, it is just like, but it's like listening to Charlie Brown say, wah, 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 wah. It's just horrid. But people are stepping up because they have looked at it like, kind of like ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. I think that is starting to make more sense to people. But I think it's now ask not what your country is going to tell you, but what you demand of your country to let you know. There needs to be a little bit of a change today because that was important then. But today it's more like don't just let your country decide for you. You decide for your country. And I think we're back to the red flags and white flags. Let's just hope we're all on the same team to get our republic back, because we're not supposed to be a monarchy. We shouldn't have had Bush, Clinton. And for those who threw such a fit about Trump these last 4 years, so you want a monarchy? You were fine with Bush, Clinton. You were fine with that establishment. You were okay with the same old. No one's. I don't even think Trump people were saying Trump is perfect. I mean, there's a very small amount of people that behaved that way and that said he could do no wrong. But I've been ticked off for 20 years. For 20 years, I've just watched us get into a quagmire that we should have never been in. A situation that put us in today's state of mind that we're all in and we're all suffering. And, thanks to the people who voted for the same establishment that screwed us and our world up and spit us out. They've divided us by race, by socioeconomic subgroups, religion, and now the jabbed versus the unjabbed. I mean, they just don't stop. I mean, it's absolute eugenic sociopaths. And after all of this, they want a revolution and a reset? No. They don't get to make those declarations. You can't make a declaration like that, because these are people that can't lead a sandwich out of a sandwich bag. I mean, everything they're doing is very sloppy. It's very overt. And then when they try to cover it up with like some kind of a trickery on both sides of the aisle, it ends up blowing up in their face. I mean, these are the same people who say an egg is healthy and an egg is not healthy. And I, as a mom, I'm frustrated. And in fact, if either side of the aisle really cares about the country, they're going to agree with people who feel the way that I do. They're going to understand why people are saying these things. They're not going to be big babies and say, "Wah, I don't want to be criticized." No, well, then stop acting that way. I mean, we're at a critical time, and people are going to start speaking out more. And there's no way out of it. If you're going to be doing such detrimental things, there's going to be blowback. And if you're not mature enough to handle it, what are you doing it for? You can't handle it. And we see that with decisions that have been made over the years. And that's, I think, their disdain for people. They can't handle what they put into motion, and then they can't handle the reverberation, what comes back. And so then the people become bad. Not their action that caused this response. If you don't understand cause and effect, you did this, and because you did it this way, it caused this. Now, there are factors where people come into that and they manipulate it to upset, maybe if we're on a good course. That's expected, right? That's what we should all understand. But it's not the same when someone is trying to sabotage your efforts and your efforts are coming from a good place. When you do get blowback, you're able to speak to it. You're able to explain it very soberly, in a very concise and logical manner. And the other side looks crazy and chaotic and insane at that time. And I don't see either side like really being able to explain what it is and what their intentions are. I see them saying, "No, I just have the best intentions. Look at the other side. They've got horrible intentions." And yeah, there are people on both sides who have really horrible intentions, but then we're leaving out the common man, and that's who always suffers. And there's just at this point, the common man shouldn't be quiet. I mean, all of our money goes to taxes. Ultimately, we're held responsible because it's our labor that pays for wars that don't need to happen. It's our labor that paid for all of the weapons that were left behind in Afghanistan. I mean, we're the ones who caused this issue, by being silent or sitting here. And, everyone has to pick their focus. And some of us are focused on one thing and some of us are focused on the other, which is very important. And so I would hope that people aren't screaming at those individuals who are looking at a point in which their heart is moved to concentrate on, and claim that they're not looking at something that they would prefer to listen to, and then calling them disingenuous or fake, because there's a lot of people that are concentrating on different facets to get to the truth. And so it's best for you, if you're tuning into somebody that's concentrating on a facet you want to know about, but you want them to talk about something else and they're not, go to someone who may be specializing in that or talking about that, or move to say that. Don't expect for people to meet you where you are without you trying to meet them where they are. And I feel that that's what's happening in the community of people who are trying to tell the truth. There's a lot of division. There's a lot of gossiping, backbiting, and distrust. And then, a lot of people are, being looked at as, oh, they're part of the problem, or they're part of that group that's, ultimately evil. And I would say that group is a very small number of people. And a lot of other people who might be trying to help, they might be misled, or they might be not really hitting on the points that they need to, but they're looking for the truth. And in between that, the ones who are disingenuous will stick out like a sore thumb. We just need to let them stick out before we start to claim that, they're part of that issue, because it'll become obvious, rather than cutting off all those people who we need to actually search for the truth. Because there are people that are elected that are frustrated, and they don't know what to do, and they're just waiting on people to demand the truth, and so that then they ultimately have to push back on their handlers. And so I'm willing to push back, and I'm so glad that you push back as well, John. And that's one thing that drew me to your channel, is because you do it very diplomatically. You also do it with care. You're doing it with heart, but also bringing up historical events and trying to get us to consider and remember where we've come from, and to remind us what that looks like, and to have us question if we want to go there again. So that's what is so important about wisdom, and listening to those who have been around a little longer, rather than just listening to the hearts and the utopia that's coming from our younger generation. They're very important to listen to because they come up with a lot of great ideas. But as far as implementing ideas that basically will have no foundation, we have to listen to the foundation that comes from our elders, and those who have lived through it and that have a little bit more wisdom. And that's what I've appreciated so much about your channel. So I'm so happy to have found this group of people who try not to put bias before truth. And although we're all human, I would just have to say, you guys do a damn good job.
Well, thanks for being part of it, and your perspective is essential, especially with you being a mother, and are able to keep your finger on the pulse of how our kids are doing generally. I mean, with a fabulous mother like yours, even the kids are still struggling, worrying about, I don't want to die, and that's that must be tough for a mother to hear that. Just to go back, a couple things that I've tried to footnote in my mind or mind note, or whatever you want, footnote, in my head. Yeah, footnotes in my head. That's good. Um, the first one was, you mentioned whooping cough, and then after that, you mentioned a number of conditions that kids go through. One of them that I've been interested in lately, because of the word synthesia, yeah, synthesia.
Synthesia, or yeah.
Right, synthesia, which George Webb has been very concerned about. And I noticed that this thing called RSV has existed for quite a long time, and that kids go through it almost universally, and they do tend to recover from it. But is it? And then I saw also that uh, the CDC is recommending that people be tested now for that kids be tested for this RSV. And I'm thinking, well, this is an interesting question. Can they distinguish RSV from COVID? And more to George's point, can this RSV be actually be part of COVID? Now, I don't expect you to know the medical answer yet, but to what extent has RSV always been a part of growing up as far as you're raising kids? And is it particularly acute now? Why did you what and then tell us about whooping cough and what that is a symptom of.
Okay. So usually when my kids get sick, my grandmother told me this a long time ago. Um, this is before YouTube or you could look it up. She would say, you need to call someone and mimic their cough, mimic what it is that they're going through, and then someone can help you because you're going to need to diagnose depending on what that sounds like. And thank goodness we have something like YouTube or internet today. And so as soon as I heard his cough, it was more like oh. It was deep, and it sounded like a child has when they have whooping cough or when they have there's no fluid. It's a deep cough or they can't catch their breath. So I immediately looked up what that would sound like. I was confused because whooping cough usually comes with babies and kids are vaccinated from it. So then I knew, well, there's so many viruses around now because of our immune system and what we've all been through. So I decided, you know what, I really need to, and I'd been looking into RSV simply because I saw a CDC article from a month ago where they said right before the southern states started to get hit pretty hard, they said, oh, we have a new RSV virus that's hitting the southern states really hard. And I looked and I remembered, wait, when I had kids, they talked about being careful because of RSV, or I would go to a play date and, a couple of kids wouldn't show up. The moms would be like, oh, where is so-and-so? Oh, one of her kids got RSV and it's an upper respiratory issue, so it should go away. They're going to give steroids for it. And it'll go away because it really only affects the elderly and people who already have underlying conditions, aka comorbidities, or infants. And so when I read that, I was like, well, that's odd that a new RSV virus, not in the winter and not during a season in which it would be normal, is just running rampant. And then I saw it's running rampant all over the world. And I was like, oh, I guess COVID had wound down. And now here's something that mimics it. So a lot of these articles I pulled up about a month ago, it kept talking about how it mimics it. It mimics the symptoms of COVID. And then I was like, oh, well, that's not good. And then we started getting an uptick. And then I wondered, where could people and doctors and nurses think that, okay, this is the Delta variant? Well, if the parent doesn't know to come in and say, my kid is sick, could you give an RSV test? They have that test, right? And they can give an RSV test. If a parent doesn't ask that, most parents are going to go, oh my gosh, my kid's sick, give them a COVID test. It might pop negative, but then they could say, well, sometimes these are negative or whatever. And unless that nurse is aware that there's an uptick in RSV, they may not say, let's check for that, right? Because usually you're checking little babies for that. That's not something that's been checked. And it was one of those articles that are like pushed to the bottom. So then when I looked up RSV, I saw the word syncytia and I was like, oh, there you go. So then I saw that actually the CDC tried to put out a vaccination for RSV about a month ago, and the trials failed and they had to scrap it. So then that made sense with the syncytia, that made sense with it mimicking COVID. So what we did is we took our child to the pediatrician and we had first him be checked for RSV. and then for strep, and then COVID all came back negative. So then we figured if it's whooping cough, it'll be like 24, 48 hours. And so we said, well, we'll have him out for like 3 or 4 days. We'll make sure there's no fever. There's nothing. The pediatrician said he could go back to school today, but we're going to wait until probably Wednesday or Thursday. And when I started looking into RSV, I then wondered how many adults, how many people, because adults are getting RSV, which is not very common. And adults of all ages, which is not very common. And so if they go in and they get a test for COVID and it comes back negative and they're still really sick, unless you're getting steroids for RSV and you're getting like a something to open up that chest cavity, you could actually cause more damage and end up, because people who have severe RSV have to go get on a ventilator. And so if there's no answer for you, and you're just waiting, then you're going to be panicked saying, oh my gosh, I should have gotten the jab if you didn't have it. And if you're vaccinated, you're going to say, well, my goodness, how is this possible? It's those people who aren't jabbed. It's their fault, right? Then you have the divide. So I think that it would behoove hospitals to make sure they have extra RSV tests to see if in fact that's what it is. And the CDC did put out something that in December, they're going to be having a test that differentiates flu from COVID, but not a lot of people know this, and only a few doctors have it. They have an all of the above test. They actually can give you a test that tells them what you have. They just don't use it everywhere, because I don't know what companies are pushing just to give a COVID test or just to give this. But I think the more that people request that their doctors, and if they could call their doctors and say, I think you need to have the test that's the all of the above, make sure you find out who makes those tests, where they come from, what their positive to negative rate is. But then also ask your doctor if they have on hand RSV tests, flu tests. And when you go in, don't assume that it's automatically COVID, because right now they don't have anything to give you and you're just waiting it out. And then you could get walking pneumonia or some other issue. So I would say, whatever you would need antibiotics or a steroid first, have that checked. And so I would do like a strep test and then do an RSV test, then a flu test. Then after, if all those come back negative and you're like, I need to know, then do a COVID test. If you do a COVID test first, they might not give you a different test, because if it comes back that you have COVID, you might have something else as well that you can medicate to lighten the symptoms. So I think that's what's being lost in translation during this time, is the people weren't testing for the things that need to be tested first. Because when you need antibiotics and you don't get them, that turns to infection. When you need steroids and you don't get them, that turns to severe inflammation. And then that could exacerbate an issue and make something that would be a survival rate much higher than it is, much lower than it should be. So I think that's where we have to stop waving flags, right? We need to just start demanding that our doctors know what they're talking about. They're giving the tests that are necessary, because a lot of times what they're learning is from the drugs that they are prescribing to their patients, instead of learning how to be a practitioner that's listening to the whole person. And we've gone away from listening to the whole person to listening for the symptoms and the cure. That's an automatic cure that might not actually touch base on what the underlying cause is. And that's why I appreciated what you said last night, John, about how people with anxiety and people who are traumatized or stressed, it's causing, what I think you said, 30%. It's causing health issues. It's causing like depression, lots of different issues with their body, and causing them to get sick. And we all know the cortisol level goes up, and that can cause a lot to happen in a person's body, just simply stress and anxiety. And you pair that with not getting the proper testing because everyone's in a panic. And then you've got the fact that there were so many false positives and false negatives, and people don't even have trust for it. So we're just running around in circles wondering who we can trust. So it's a wonder that we haven't all lost our minds 100%. And I would say that we should be thankful that we've kept our heads about us, or at least a lot of us have, during this time in which it seems like people who have no conscience are playing really big games with our whole hearts, mind, and souls. And I'm hoping that those same people don't say that they have a religious foundation or a righteous foundation, because I question that.
Well, you know, and thanks for your kind compliments about my show last night. And the two previous shows, which I think that led up to my last night's show, were both called the Occult Reset. And I called it the Occult Reset because there's magic going on here. There's sleight of hand. There's deception. There's misdirection, and the media is how they do it. It's like all the media, from the newspapers to television to everything. It's all this incredible attempt to fool us, just like in the Wizard of Oz. The man behind the curtain is still pulling the levers and acting as though he can basically control our lives and lead us into various traps that we didn't want to be in, and get us stuck doing things that we don't want to do, or conversely, let the flying monkeys go, uh, and then poppies will put them to sleep. How much of that movie is in many ways is coming real right now. The hand behind the curtain is still in charge, and we try to pull back that curtain. All of us do. Everybody that's working on this. I think of my. I was thinking today of all the one of the biggest principles that, and I know that you basically said the same thing tonight, but I want to just emphasize this, is that nobody can be can have all the facts in their minds at once, and nobody can study everything well enough to answer all the questions. So it follows from that there's going to be a lot of good people out there that are going to, for what reason or another, be misled in one respect or another. But that doesn't mean that the rest of their work isn't worthwhile. And you think of somebody like Robert David Steele, who passed away, and I don't know the circumstances, but it was all over all of the media that he died of a disease that he called a hoax. That they really love to have that kind of headline. Anti-vaxxer dies of COVID with a ventilator, and him saying, I I want everybody to get a shot right now. Please go get a shot. This emotional appeal, in other words. But what I was talking about with Robert David Steele is a guy worked with Cynthia McKinney, the former congresswoman, and did some really good work. In it basically during the campaign, he and she were running. I don't know which one was running for president. I think it was her.
Mm.
But the the only thing I'm trying to say here is that I have significant differences with some of the people that I love very, very much, and I love to talk to people that I can agree with, but also I can't be afraid to talk to somebody just because I disagree with them on one point. So I'm thinking of my mind is kind of like a mosaic. I've got all these little tiles that I get from this place and that place and other places, and that puts together for me kind of like the picture behind you. All of these pictures have come together in a way that represents, your children and what you want to present to them. Well, I get all this stuff from all the different angles, from historians and psychologists and journalists like George, and uh, uh, it's uh, it's just, I think, really worth saying that you can't don't look for a guru. Don't look for somebody that's going to answer all your questions. But find the answer yourself and rely on people that have done the work before. Because even if they even came to a different conclusion, This person spent 10 years studying the subject, for goodness sakes. Don't throw all of that away just because you don't agree with them about one certain thing. Uh, that's the way to learn, is to have a very just to sweep a big broad net out there and and keep what you need, keep what you can use. And if you can't use it, don't spend the rest of your life criticizing it. Don't just walk away from it. There's just life is too short. You got to grab the good stuff, right?
I agree. And actually, John, earlier today, I received a message from a friend who is really disappointed in the reaction that, or the lack of reaction, her friends have had, who for the last 4 years claimed just outraged when it came to certain behaviors of our last president. And now they're very quiet. And for her, she just accepted them as people who didn't like the last president, and they were just looking for, somebody better. But when those same proclivities came up that they professed our old president to have, they are silent about our new president having those same proclivities, and she was very upset. And so I'll read to you because I printed it out, because it's something that I always think on the inside, but I'm not able to verbalize it. And so I printed it out so I could kind of touch base on what you just said, because we all need to, not saying support people that we know are detrimental to us and everything we stand for. I'm saying that a lot of people are going to upset us and let us down, not because they're trying to upset us, but because they may not see something, or we may not see or understand why they feel a certain way about one thing or the other. And so I think during this time, it's about taking personal responsibility and being that individual that you're wanting to see from them, fill in that gap, right? Instead of taking that time to criticize, take that energy and that emotion to fill in the gap that they may not be giving you, that you need. Give it to yourself. Don't want them to be something that they weren't made to be, because you're at that point not allowing them their own sovereignty, their own path, because you're in demand of your frustration, and mostly that happens from fear. And so I'm usually very patient with that, because I get fearful and I get super judgmental and I get very hot-headed. And so this is what I wrote her when she was very saddened, because we've all been friends for a very long time. It's a big group of women. And so when she told me that she was upset they were silent right now, and that it opened her eyes and she was very discouraged, this is what I wrote her. Always remember, we are battling a spiritual war. Not everyone can see or understand their bias. It is difficult to find comfort in others that feel as if they have no backbone or are letting you down because they seem to be hypocritical in their stances. Just breathe deep and know that you will lead in searching for the unbiased truth, your truth. If we that can see pursue this measure, others we care about that are disappointing us will come around. We can only pray they followed the example of others looking for unbiased truth, or that it is taken in by their subconscious. Our friends that have been silent during a time in which we expected acknowledgement of upsetting facts will not change if they are judged. Remember to be kind but firm on who you are personally. Our children will appreciate our candor when they remember these days. Keep your heads up and your hearts open. And if you follow somebody on YouTube and you appreciate 50%, 60%, 30%, if you appreciate anything they do, take that you appreciate and harness it and be thankful for them. And anything that's not sitting right with you, Find then someone who is going to touch on things that will sit right with you, because I can bet you money those things that you appreciate in the other person, that person that you're going to for this other thing that you're moved to, is not going to say the same things, and you may not appreciate something in the same kind of stance that person previous you were expecting them to be godlike, or some kind of a guide a superhero that gets us through everything. So you have to understand that we have to fill in those gaps. And so if I hear something on a YouTube channel, I'm like, oh, that makes me uncomfortable. That's not what I believe. Instead of going, hey, that's not what I believe, I then go and look for something opposite of what I'm feeling. So instead of looking for confirmation bias, I don't immediately go to confirm my own bias. I go to try to understand why that person is saying that. And I look for articles and keywords. And then after that, I look for why I feel the way I do. And I learned this because growing up, my mom was liberal and my dad was conservative. That made me more of a peacemaker and independent. And I love my mom. And so I understood liberals have good hearts. And I love my dad. So I understand conservatives have good hearts. So therefore, when I hear people and what they're saying, I know that they're not evil incarnate walking around. I know that it's from their own path and their own experiences. And I think we fall short when we're expecting someone to be in our head, have our path, our understanding, and say exactly what we want. If we held them up on such a high pedestal, we're gonna experience a very difficult reality check when something doesn't quite happen in a way that we're wanting. We're going to be very disappointed, and don't put that pressure on somebody else. No one should have to have that pressure on their shoulders, that if they don't please every single person that's seeing it a certain way, or even if they had a certain state of mind or a certain way of belief, and then seems like they switched up, hear them out. That doesn't mean just go and do something. Someone might be meant to go an opposite way, or meant to experience something from a different perspective, or maybe they have friends in that arena that brought them comfort to something that they once did not trust. Until you're comfortable with doing something, don't do it. But also don't tell someone that, that 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 somehow they've let you down. Just if you really sincerely feel that way, be let down, but fill in that gap, right? Look for a way to mention something without pointing a finger. So if you don't agree with someone who's making a statement, look for something that you're concerned about and just mention it without pointing a finger. Just a factual based, question or statement that reaffirms how you feel, and allow them to be them. And I'm hoping they allow you to be you. And if they have any dignity and any kindness within their heart, they will allow you to be you, because they will appreciate that you're allowing them to be them.
I think words like dignity are very important. And, even if you have to criticize someone, don't take away their dignity, you know? Say,
Yes.
well, I disagree with you. I respectfully disagree with you, but don't
Yeah.
go overboard. Like some of us, I mean, I have what's called a smart Irish mouth.
Yeah.
I don't
Me
know if
too.
you've ever oh, yeah, okay.
Oh, I'm hot
Uh,
headed. Ooh,
yeah,
yeah.
all right. Well, we'll take that under consideration in case you get mad at me the next show, Amber. But it's been a great pleasure tonight.
Yeah.
It's 9 o'clock already, so our hour just flew by. So,
John,
yeah,
do you mind if I read a poem that I wrote?
I don't mind at all.
Okay. So this is about our trust. And I'm just going to, from a religious perspective, I know some people are not religious. I'm going to explain it like a snake. So, like a slithering snake. And I named it The Ways of the Slithering Snake. Okay. And it's the snake that slithers is a slithering snake. It glides about and admits no mistake. Once it is caught, it slowly curls up, then admits it's a snake and pretends it is stuck. Beware of the snake, so wise and conniving. It will try to convince you of the false truth it's contriving. Proclaiming truth, they say, is not the proof that you need. They watch as you reread and search for the truth of the deed. Snakes whisper those things they are planning while slowly moving to enact them. Then, ruthlessly ignoring the root, they viciously point to the stem. I'm warning you of their deeds that grow their confidence and pride. Beware of the snake, I again remind you, as they slither, smile, and slide.
Beware of the snake. That was beautiful. I think Amber, you've got some wisdom way beyond your years, and it's you're a mentor and a guide for people in a kind of a way that you just by who you are, you provide the mentorship and leadership for us. Your perspective on the world is an essential part of what I am trying to do here, and that is to bring everybody together. And I don't have somebody in my life that has a couple of kids in school that are working their way through these crises. Not to say that every generation doesn't have crises to deal with. Mine did, yours did. Your 9/11 moment was mine. My JFK moment, and these traumas need families. They need leadership. They need people like you to help us through them, and that makes us stronger in the end. If we don't confront our our fears, then we don't get stronger. But if we confront our fears, then we can find that we can get through an awful lot of amazing trials and tribulations, and we can look out for those snakes along the way.
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much. Everybody have a good night, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow. Amber, I hope to see you again in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
All right, John. Good night, Ospreys.